Welcome to the IT Matters Podcast, where we explore why IT matters and matters pertaining to IT.
Welcome to the IT Matters Podcast, hosted by Opkalla. At Opkalla, we help IT teams understand the busy marketplace of technology, strategy, and services with a data-driven approach. On this podcast, we invite technology leaders to discuss the challenges facing the modern IT department. And my name is Keith Hawkey, technology advisor with Opkalla. And today we're discussing IT leadership and how empathy plays an important role in upgrading your IT team. With two very special guests, Jess Levin, technology advisor with Opkalla, that has half a decade of experience working alongside the brightest CIOs and CISOs in the business, and Glenn Hasteadt. Glenn is the IT director for Onslow County and a frequent speaker and instructor for cultural change and general leadership. He has a keen passion for leadership topics. He also hosts a workshop for school and government on how to build powerful teams. His team has been recognized as a Digital County's Top 10 recipient for the past 7 years. And Glenn was recognized as the Nickel Giza IT Professional of the Year in 2023. Glenn has served the public sector since 1998 and brings almost 3 decades of experience to the podcast. Glenn and Jess, welcome to the IT Matters Podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Excited to be here.
Likewise. First, Glenn, what is the Digital County's Top 10 and how does one become recognized?
It's published by eRepublic, I believe. It's a survey that's sent out to every county in the country. They then take all those surveys back and then rank everybody. It's an interesting distinction to have, Onslow County, little old county here on the coast of North Carolina, to get recognized at a national level. That's a pretty big deal for us.
How many counties generally apply for something like this?
I have no idea. I don't know how many apply. I know there's 100 counties alone in the state of North Carolina. I don't know how many there are across the nation. I have no idea how many apply, but I know it's a pretty big deal. They give the awards out at the county conference every year that they have wherever in the country. It's
always nice to have IT departments become recognized. I've seen more and more of that lately, particularly. I think IT for a long time was the unsung hero, but with social media and how IT has become so integral to the business success of the modern organization, more and more accolades and public highlights are becoming more frequent.
Yeah, and that's what you guys do too, right? Is you help IT companies become more successful and get that limelight, get that shine.
On the topic of Keith's point in IT playing a super integral role in the greater development of organizations as a whole, right? One thing that I've noticed just in my shorter tenure has been in certain organizations, there can be a divide between the IT vertical versus some of the business departments, operations, et cetera. In speaking with you, it feels like there is a level of camaraderie and togetherness in the organization as a whole. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about the role that you play as an IT leader in creating some of that environment.
Without them, there's no point in having us, right? If all those lines of business weren't here, there's no point to have IT. Doing IT for the sake of IT is fun, but, really doesn't serve a lot of purpose. And so we recognize that all the almost 30 different lines of business that we support, they're the ones that are on the pointy end of the stick, that are serving our citizens, that are, serving our communities. We don't rescue people from burning buildings and things like that, but we support the people who do. And that's where we get to make a difference, right? If we can make their jobs easier, if we can make their jobs possible, if we can make the integration with the citizen better and easier, that's where we can win, because we don't get to serve the community in a direct sense for the most part.
Glenn, what do you think is the number one issue holding back IT leaders today that are looking to upgrade their leadership, upgrade their capacity to build the most cohesive teams? In your years of experience, what's missing?
There's a distinct lack of focus on frankly on leadership. Many of us were promoted out of very technical roles for being really good technical people. And this is stuff that we went to school for, and, we have years of experience. But then when you're thrust into a leadership position, that's literally an entirely different job. And if we don't try to learn the skills that make that job successful, then we can't achieve the best that we can achieve. And our teams can't either. I really feel like an organization's culture is the most determinant factor for current and future success over any technology or anything. If you don't have a great culture, if you don't have an environment where people feel safe, where they can innovate and do those things, then it doesn't matter what technology you have. You're only going to be so good. And you're never going to be able to, like you guys, bring great technology to organizations. If they don't have the wherewithal to leverage that, you're never going to achieve what you possibly could achieve with all that.
I guess what would be some advice that you would give to the newer or more newly emerging technology leaders on how to clearly communicate objectives versus expectations? I know in speaking with you, that's a framework that you followed and it's worked for you, tried and true.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your perspective.
To me, there's like 5 different things you really have to focus on, right? Obviously, you got to build trust first. Every relationship is built on trust. Leadership is nothing but a relationship, but you have to have clear expectations. You have to have clear objectives. If people don't know where the finish line is, they can't ever exceed it. You'll just demotivate them because they'll never be able to reach it. You have to communicate 3 times more than you think you do. That communication isn't just words on a paper or spoken word. It's appreciation and correction, right? If like Jess, you do a great job. If I appreciate you, I'm going to appreciate you in front of the whole team. And I'm sure Keith would do the same thing, right? When you appreciate someone, you appreciate it in front of the whole team, and that's doing nothing but clarifying objectives and expectations for people. Yes, you're appreciating someone, but you're also saying, hey, my expectations are here, you're way up here. And that's great. And everybody wants to be appreciated and valued for, what they bring. So if they see me praising you, the rest of the team is going to go, oh, that, I want to do that. I want the boss to call me out for that. And a lot of times what we do is we focus on correcting people, still communicating expectations. It's just the other side of the coin. The problem with that is you're only correcting one person. You're only clarifying expectations for one person. You really get more bang for your buck doing positive reinforcement than you do with negative. And this is the one thing I try to get across whenever I'm speaking or teaching is if you look for what people are doing right instead of what they're doing wrong, you'll have that material to clarify expectations for everybody in a positive way as opposed to a negative way. So, I know when you're working with companies, relationships and communication is huge, right? So how do you get your point across when you're talking to somebody?
I'll add one aspect to that. Since we work heavily with the leadership roles of IT, but also, we're in the trenches with the network admins and the infrastructure managers and the cybersecurity analysts, and building them up in front of their bosses when they're doing a great job. I've found to get everyone on board, to get everyone on the same page when they're making a transformation. So, highlighting on calls how well everyone that's in the trenches doing the day-to-day work and the value that they've brought to bringing a transformation to life, bringing a technology change that requires a significant amount of effort. And a lot of times, these moves can go wrong, whether you're deploying a new technology or you didn't onboard properly. So highlighting the good work of everyone involved is, a key part to, our strategy in helping that team be cohesive.
One of the important aspects to take into consideration is on the front end, we really take the time to understand what is the business objective and what are they trying to accomplish, what is the goal, right? And so there's a level of accountability in the partnership from the technology advisor, Opkalla's side, and the customer side. And so I feel like it creates a good dynamic for us to help get them there, but along the way through the positive reinforcements like Keith was mentioning, and understanding what their role is and the part that they play, and recognizing how implementing a new technology may affect them and the organization at whole. And so I think it's, to your point, there's a lot of communication and moving parts involved.
That's a really good point too, is you're going in and caring about them. Essentially, you're caring about their problems and what they want to do. And that's really all I'm doing, is I'm caring about the people that I have in the room, that I'm blessed to have on my team. And I spend time with them on their careers, and spend time with them and on whatever issues they're facing at the time. And that goes a long way when somebody really feels like you care about them and their problems, as opposed to just making a sale for your, on your side, or if it's just to get whatever task done on my side,
Glenn, you make a good point. I think it all starts with culture.
Yeah.
It all begins with why are we doing this? Why are we here? Why are we outside of making, a career and an income and supporting our families, where do our hearts lie? One of the ways that Opkalla engenders a level of compassion within their teams is we have Monday morning meetings, and we adjourn every meeting with recognition of various everyone within the company, from operations to sales to leadership, of who has gone above and beyond and who has fulfilled one of our cultural characteristics. There are times that I'm thinking, what can I do this week to be recognized on that Monday morning meeting? Who can I help? I think it's brought about a lot of camaraderie within our organization, and it's very practical the way that's implemented.
Yeah, I love that. We actually start all of our meetings with that. With kudos. I've been here 8.5 years. I've never been able to start a monthly meeting without kudos. We also do something fun too, is, I've got a bunch of introverts in the room, and 2 divisions. And one of the divisions is GIS, which is Geographic Information Systems. The whole country is really just scratching the surface of what GIS can do. And we really want to drive that capability into the organization. And so I needed them to go out and evangelize. Well, that's tough when you got a bunch of people that really don't want to speak in front of other people. What we started doing is we started having TED Talks every month, and somebody different on the team has to give a TED Talk. Everybody in the room has to sign up, and it's 15 minutes. And I didn't care what they spoke about as long as it was safe at work, So it could have been work related, not work related. It didn't matter to me. The point was I wanted them to get some experience doing public speaking and things like that. It's been wonderful. We've had like bird watching and origami and self-defense and just wonderful topics that range, just across the board. And what's great is it's topics that everybody's passionate about. And so when you learn more about that person, now you can have that closer relationship and things like that. So it's really brought us even closer together too, which was kind of cool. But to do that, to have that environment, first, though, we had a focus, I've been focusing on years on creating an environment where people feel safe, where they feel like they can be their authentic self. And that way, when they're doing these TED Talks, everybody in the room is cheering for them. They're just looking for what they're going to do right. And the only person that sees what they're doing wrong is the person that's giving the speech. And they know that. And that's what empowers them to do that, I guess. But that's an important part of it. And I think you're doing that too when you're working with technology teams. When you call them out for them being great like that, you're really creating a safe place for them to make that technology work.
I think that's an interesting perspective, because the TED Talks, they create a level of confidence in specifically the scenario that the GIS team going out to evangelize, right? But it also empowers them to make sure internally on group meetings that their voice is being heard. And I think it plays a part so much greater than maybe that one specific scenario they,
sure,
think that they're doing that activity for. I just think it goes a long way. On the topic of just empathy, building trust, truly caring about your team, on a personal level, what do you do if somebody is suffering or experiencing like personal hardships? How do you create the space of trust for them to open up to you? Like, as an IT leader, what are some of your tactics in handling that?
That's probably one of the most important things you can do. It's easy to celebrate when somebody's kid wins an award at school or whatever. But when people are going through health issues or whatever it is, difficulties in life, those valleys in life that we all experience. In my history, when somebody had anything like that going on, everybody would kind of walk around them on eggshells for a couple of weeks. That doesn't help them. That doesn't help you. That doesn't help them. That doesn't help the team. When somebody has a problem, I'm there, and they know that I'm there with them. And I'm going to go through it with them, just like a friend would, just like a family member would. I'm going to be there with them as close as they want me to be, or they allow me to be. But they do know that I care about them, and that I'm really there just for them. The other side of that is you're able to be there for them. That relationship that you have with that person grows exponentially, more so than if you were to just celebrate with them, right? If say Keith was going through a hardship and I leaned into that and said, "Hey buddy, I'm here with you. I'm going through this with you," and I check in with them on, time to time. And I'm just there to listen. Hey, I'm just here to listen. I'm not going to try to fix it. If you need to talk, I'm here. And if I'm able to be there with him and he feels that authenticity, of me really being there, we're going to have a much tighter relationship when we're done. I mean, wouldn't you say that, Keith, if I was to lean into something like that? Absolutely.
And it reminds me of why we stick with companies and how loyalty is inculcated. The number one reason that people leave companies is because they don't feel a connection with the leadership and the people they work with. There's obviously money. There's obviously, perhaps the brand of the company, who they are, and how that matches onto your identity. But you'll come across people and professionals in jobs that they could go find something that pays them more. They could find a company that's more reputable in a way, but they stay there because of the relationships they've built with their colleagues, maybe leadership. And in our world, especially a couple of years ago when COVID was in its full throes, it seemed attracting and retaining talent was incredibly difficult. You could get a 15% pay raise every 6 months if you change jobs during that time.
Right. So
the way the IT leaders that I've worked with leaned in on establishing that rapport and watering the plant every day. It is a relationship. Relationships take work. I'm married, so I know a little bit about this.
Yeah.
And treating the relationship as important as the job they're doing. It keeps people around, keeps people engaged, and they'll go the extra mile, not because they need to impress somebody, but because they care about your relationship. They care, they'll care about your success, Glenn, as a leader. They'll want you to look good because you've reached out and made sure that they care.
I mean, I think you just made a great point. We're intentional about our relationships in our marriage, kids, friends. We spend time on those. We're at work more than we're home. Why wouldn't we be more intentional about those relationships? Why wouldn't we be more, lean into those relationships more? And I think a lot of leaders, we've been told, "Oh, you need to be a leader and not a friend." Well, okay. We still need to care about people. We still, yes, there's a mission, there's a job that we have to do. And those management tasks are important, but leadership tasks are really built on relationships and trust and things like that. I can't build an environment in this room if people don't trust me and my motives. I can't build an environment in this room if people don't feel supported, like they can make a mistake and actually fail forward. I don't get all the benefits of the team if they don't feel safe. I'm sure if you ever worked anywhere where it was relatively toxic, I mean, what did you do? You kept your head down, you did what you were told, and that was it. Meanwhile, if you work somewhere where you feel safe, where you feel like you can contribute, where you can fail forward, well, now the sky's the limit. Now I get access to all of your skills and abilities and the differences that make you you, and you get to leverage them towards our mission. And I'm sure, you guys see that quite a bit when you go from place to place. There's different people everywhere you go. And it's a matter of how they can leverage those skills and abilities, right?
Yeah, I think it helps to foster innovation across the team too. When you feel safe, you feel more open to sharing the ideas that maybe you wouldn't necessarily if you weren't super comfortable, especially for the more introverted folks. I think it benefits, it does so much more than just build their personal confidence. I think it creates, again, a space for innovation, which is going to impact the team, the organization at Apple. So I had a question regarding the time management or the aspect of being an IT leader, and you invest so much time and resources and energy into creating these strong relationships and building a culture and building trust amongst the team, right? And do you feel like in the beginning you had to spend more time creating a framework that worked, and now it's kind of a well-oiled machine? And how do you sort of manage that without the tactful responsibilities that come with IT leadership as well?
Yeah, I mean, as technical people, we're familiar with keeping the lights on, keeping things running and keeping things safe, right? And that part, we don't have to really think about anymore. But creating this culture in here, it's conceptually easy, actually just care about people and build trust. And it sounds easy, but actually putting your feet there every minute, being intentional about that every minute of every day is really hard. I had notes on my desk. My first 6 to 9 months, I had notes on my desk with my culture goals. This is what I want to, this is the kind of culture that I'm trying to create. And don't forget this and don't forget that. And my desk was literally covered with Post-it notes reminding me of what to do. And I would go out and we'd be doing stuff, and I would come back to my desk and, oh yeah, I'd go back out. And that was really hard for about 6 to 9 months. But frankly, after then, it just became who I was. And the joy of it is it's really hard in the beginning, but now 8.5 years later, it gets exponentially easier. Right. When we onboard people, I don't have to go through the effort to get them integrated into our culture. The team does it. It just happens. And actually, it's kind of fun when we hire new people. They normally they'll be like, oh, this is just, everybody's being nice to me because I'm new, and it's fun because I get to watch them in however long it takes, 2-3 months. And they go, oh no, this is how these people are. Mm-hmm. And it's just, to me, it's fun to, watch that light bulb go on. Yeah. They've been waiting for the other shoe to drop for 2 or 3 weeks or whatever it is. And then they're like, no, this is it. This is how these people are. And it's wonderful.
Really makes it easy to go into work.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. And that's what a great way to think about your culture, right? Your culture of your organization is how you think Sunday night with Monday coming. And it's not just you, right? It's the people on the team. How do they think about going in Monday morning, Sunday night? Are they dreading it? Are they ambivalent, or are they excited? Mm-hmm. I had a lady that was in the team. She was out for Thanksgiving with family and stuff. She's like, I couldn't wait to get back to work. That's awesome. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on the youth coming through the IT department today? Are you, I think that bringing humanity into leadership is universal. However, from a management standpoint, leadership standpoint, Is there any difference when you're working to build rapport and to get the most out of some of the younger generation that are coming through IT compared to those that have been around for a couple decades? Personality differences that you're noticing, or any tactics that are more effective?
People are people, right? You want to feel cared for. You want to feel like you're valued. You want to feel like you matter, and that it's important that it's you and not somebody else in that chair, right? I think, I've got people at all different stages of their career here. People that are ready to retire, people that still have a few years, and people that are, younger than my youngest, just starting out their career. To me, what's important is, you got to communicate with everyone a little differently. The communication is a little different, but spending time with them, in my office and understanding what their goals are, what their challenges are, where they need help, where they see themselves exceeding, and things like that is really helpful. I actually especially take a little more time with the younger staff coming in, because they're not thinking, for the most part, of their career and their career path. Nobody's ever asked them what they want their business card to say when they retire. Nobody's ever asked them what they want their career to look like in 5 and 10 years. And so they have to really spend a lot of time thinking about that. But just asking that question and getting them to think about that and making sure they know that's important to you is huge. And that's true of people in the middle of their career as well. Maybe nobody's ever asked them their entire career and they've been in the industry for 20 years. Just spending that time with them. Hey, where do you want to go? And let's see how we can get you there, and give you a project that lines up with that and things like that, so you can get some experience and see if that's really what you want to do. I know anybody on my team says they want to go into leadership. They buckle up because they know it's coming. And, we're reading books and we're talking about them, and, we're giving them the behind the scenes. Why did I say this a certain way? Why did I write this email like that? And this is my goal. And that I give them that peek behind the curtain, so to speak, and they can understand, how much effort is really put into it. And they can see if that's what they really want to do. But I think that's really what it is understanding. Just like you guys, when you're working with, if you're working with a technology leader, what they say they want sometimes isn't what their goals really are, right? You have to kind of discover the best way to solve that problem, right? And
that's hard to do if there's not trust in the relationship. So I feel like it's a full circle conversation, right? There's investments and deposits and on end of that. And then it creates a nice cohesive relationship for us to take a seat, and in the front seat with them and help them really roadmap. Like, you said you want this, but maybe this is actually what you want. And playing a part in that is special.
I think vulnerability plays a pretty key part in relationship building. I think in our industry, you run across a lot of people that certainly like to have the appearance that they know everything, that they can solve all of your problems. That doesn't bring about trust from my experience. I think leading with some level of vulnerability, of humanity, humility in a way, and coming across in the manner that, look, there are ways that you might be able to help, but you're still human. And if you don't know the answers to questions, you want to demonstrate that you'll go find the answers. You don't have to be an expert in everything. Leading with humility is a way that I think personally I've been able to form some of my closest relationships. Is they've gotten to know me as a flawed person, as a flawed individual. Whatever IT leader that I'm working with, if you lead this way, they'll reciprocate and they will open up in that manner. I'd say, leading with humility has certainly been one of my most powerful strategies to, bring about a deep rapport. Yeah, because I tell my team, if I got the best idea in the room, we're messing up. I mean, because,
They're amazing. I got the best team in the state. I mean, they're just fantastic. And
you've got the awards to prove it.
That's right. And I want, and I need to get them, like to Jess's point, they need to feel safe and they need to have that trust. That's one mistake I think a lot of leaders make is when they're promoted, now they feel like they have to have all the answers. They have to be the best in the room. They have to, and that's not true. Otherwise, why would you have the team? You know, if you can do it all, then why do you have a team? You have that team for the different points of view and the different abilities that they bring. It's not just a pair of hands to do your ideas, you know. And when I came here and I was able to say, hey, this is what I like. The way I would bring them into that is, you know, a lot of times people are afraid to disagree with the boss. I would have to give them kind of permission. So I would say, hey, I think this, tell me where this is wrong, or tell me where this goes bad. And so I'm giving them the permission then to disagree with me. And that's what started it. Now I'm always wrong. You know, now there's always a better idea in the room, which is wonderful, which is exactly why I have everyone there. And, you know, I start with this and then they build on it and then someone else builds on that. And it's that innovation that Jess was talking about earlier. It just kind of steamrolls until we have something that's really, really cool.
You're able to storytell specific engagements or just like action items that you've created that have actually developed your team to grow and meet the objectives that you were looking for, right? Like I'm sure a lot of leaders say, I want to create a space of innovation, right? That's the goal, of course. But in you saying,
Sure.
You open up conversations to make them feel comfortable to tell you how you're wrong or tell you how things could go differently. Like that's action. And I feel like that's the difference maybe that some leaders don't have or could be looking for to fill that gap. So I think your perspective is really, really cool. And hopefully it'll help a lot of people who choose to listen.
When a lot of people talk about culture change, when I hear leaders talk to me about culture change, a lot of times they talk about it as how they want the team to change. And that's not how it works, right? The culture in the room is a reaction to me, right? They react to the leader for the most part. And if I see something I don't like, the first place I need to look is the mirror and say, what am I doing that's allowing or promoting that behavior? And then I can address it. And that perspective of I'm the first person that needs to change is essential to creating this environment. And like I talk about changing culture, I speak quite a bit, and I'll do it with people in my team in the room. You know, so if I wasn't saying what I actually do, that would be incredibly destructive. But
the change begins with the leader.
Absolutely.
Not the other way around. I think that is a perfect message to leave on here as we conclude our conversation. Glenn, how can people find you if we have our listeners that would like to bounce some ideas off of you or learn from your experience? Yeah,
I'm really active on LinkedIn. There's not too many Hasteadts on LinkedIn or any, I don't think. So I'm really active on LinkedIn. And, if you want to reach out, if you want me to come talk to your group or talk at your conference, that would be at powerincaring.com, powerincaring.com. And that's a great way to get in touch with me there, too.
Thank you, Glenn and Jess, for hopping on the IT Matters podcast. We'll include how to get in contact with Glenn in the show notes. We appreciate you tuning in to the IT Matters podcast. For support in assessing your technology needs, please book a call with one of our technology advisors at opkalla.com. And if you found this episode helpful, we'd love it if you shared the podcast with someone who you think might gain value from it. And leave a review on Apple Podcasts or rate us on Spotify. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. The IT Matters podcast is produced by Opkalla, an IT advisory firm that helps businesses navigate the vast and complex IT marketplace. Learn more about Opkalla at opkalla.com.